What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Edison Club podcast. I'm your host, Mike, and tonight it is Mike's solo podcast. Really want to apologize for having a dry week there and not having a podcast. I really do not like missing out on podcast uploads. I try to really prioritize these over any type of content creation that I do, because I feel like there are a lot of people that look forward to the Friday uploads and kind of use that as an outlet and a media source to get through the day and get hyped for the weekend. So I am actually recording this Thursday night. It's 9:24 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm in North Carolina. And every time that I have tried to record one of these lately, the power has went out. So we're currently experiencing aftermath, or I guess it's currently still happening, Hurricane Debbie. And I got home from work around 5 o'clock and we had no power until about 15 minutes ago. So we were almost going to have another dry week here with no podcast, but I was bound to determine that if I did have power, I was going to get one up for you guys to enjoy on Friday. So now that we've got all of that out of the way, I really want to talk about the RBET that happened last weekend. Excuse me, I'm a little choked up. I'd actually already laid down in bed when all of my lights came back on. But so the RBET was last weekend. There were a lot of players. I do believe that it was said that it was the largest RBET in person, or maybe in general, that they have had so far. So congratulations to Keegan from over at E3 Yu-Gi-Oh! On keeping the format interesting and keeping new players interested and just keeping it growing and doing these events for us. So very, very cool that he's able to do that. We're going to go over and discuss some of the decks. These are in no particular order, but I want to give a shout out to, I do believe his name is Gary. Gary won this event playing Vayu Turbo, and we are going to look at this deck list a little bit and just kind of talk about it. Most people know about Vayu Turbo at this point, that it's probably the best deck of the format. Now we have like the top few decks, which is like Vayu Turbo, Hero Frogs, Blackwing, that kind of thing. And then we have some others that are like very, very close to it by comparison. But Vayu, I think, has won like almost every event. It's like been Vayu or Frogs winning all of these events throughout like the last year. So let's talk about this list. It seems to be very standard Vayu in the main deck. We see people kind of play around with these Armageddon Knight and Dark Grapher ratios. Gary played 2 and 2. I'm not a Vayu player, so I don't know if that's like the standard or not, if this is new. I know there's always been some sort of combination of the two, 3 and 1, or I guess 2 and 2, or somewhere in that. So the main deck is extremely standard. The side deck, however, it does have a little bit of spice to it. He actually side decked Charge of the Light Brigade. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe he didn't really want 4 copies of Raikou in his deck in game 1, but having 4 copies post side to help deal with stuff, maybe like Shadow Mirror or Iron Wall, or any of those floodgate monsters where he can just kind of ramp mill 3 and get the Raikou. Because sometimes when I have played with Vayu a little bit, sometimes you do draw multiple Raikous, especially because you're already on hamsters as well, and then you have charge, and you're like charging, and you just have a handful of Raikous. So I could definitely understand not playing charge in the main. We have seen a lot of players move away from charge in the past, but I don't believe I've ever seen anyone move it to the side deck. So that's pretty interesting here. The rest of it's pretty standard, aside from Kaiko the Ghost Destroyer. So Kaiko the Ghost Destroyer being played at 2 in this list. And that's a card that a year ago, no one really believed in. People didn't really talk about that card. They kind of said that it was just too difficult to play, too hard to get attacks through, very prone to bottomless, deep prison, stuff like that. But now we're starting to see that card be played a lot. Several of these decks were all side decking at least 1, if not 2 copies of this card. So it's pretty cool to see that card being included. It's not the best for me, considering I'm a Lightsworn main player, and that card just invalidates Necrogardna entirely and just breaks over your Lila, manages to get 2 cards out of your graveyard as well. So not super happy that the card's seeing play. from the perspective of a Lightsworn player, but it is cool just from the perspective of someone that plays the format to finally see Kaiko kind of get the respect that he deserves. So it was really cool to see that be played in there. And that's really all there is to say about the Vayu deck. I mean, everyone knows, like I've said several times, it's the best deck. It's pretty much set the standard for the whole format. So the next deck I want to talk about is James Ark's Dreamfrog deck. And this deck is really, really cool. I'm really impressed with the way this deck functions. And just watching him play this deck on stream was so cool. I didn't get to watch a lot of his matches, but I did get to watch the match where he played against Dragon Turbo, which I think was the last round before Top Cut. And he was so good at keeping his composure in a situation where I know that it would have been very difficult for me. You know, the Dragon Turbo player opened up like Future Fusion, Card Destruction, you know, and the rest is basically history. One of those hands where Dragon Turbo, you just should not lose the game. And James just shrugged it off and played his deck, you know, in the best way that he could, and ended up winning that matchup, even though it looked pretty bad for a while. He played very well. I do look up to him a lot as a player. I was actually telling some people we weren't in like a watch party or anything, but we were kind of like everyone was watching it, and we were in a group chat, just kind of like texting back and forth. And I was like, you know, that is the standard that I hold myself to. Whether or not I can do it or not, I don't know. But he went undefeated in Swiss. He gave Cameron Saunders the win, I believe, in their last round before Top Cut. So, I mean, he technically went undefeated in Swiss with this deck. And I think that's a really good goal to have. And yeah, I just would really enjoy being that consistent in the game, because sometimes I feel like I'll have really good runs and then really bad runs, and maybe it's deck choice, but I truthfully don't feel like it's deck choice. I feel like sometimes it's just things like maybe I missed a line, or maybe I misplayed, or, you know, just didn't use my cards to the most advantage that I could and get the most value out of them. But enough about me and all that. But this Dreamfrog deck list is very, very cool. Phoenix Wing Windblast in the main, Deathfrog in the main, Fishborg Blaster. It is really cool with Deathfrog, how like in the middle of your Substitute combo, you can like just Deathfrog over a threat and then just keep going into dupe block. I really like that. I think that's really cool, and I'm glad to see people being on Deathfrog with Fishborg Blaster. My teammate Blake was actually telling me about this crazy idea he had like a month and a half ago of a frog deck very similar to this. I think he was playing some stuff like Salvage in it, but same kind of general idea. Fishborg Blaster, Deathfrog, you know, all those things. And that was really cool to see this come to fruition. And Light and Darkness Dragon in the main deck, always cool to see that. It's never a card you want to see drop down against you when you're playing like a rogue deck. And even against the good decks at times, like just dropping Light and Darkness Dragon can just immediately seal the game. So quite a few trap cards in James' main deck. He has double Wind Blast, one Regeki Break, one Compulse, one Mirror Force, one Torrential, one Trap Death Shoot, and one Legacy of Yada. So a lot more traps than we see the conventional frog deck play. But alas, seems to work out pretty good. He also side decked very heavily on trap cards. Stuff like Mind Crush, Spiritual Water Art, 2 more Regeki Breaks, 2 Dust Tornadoes, and a D-Prison. So pretty cool there. And there's not a lot else to say about this. He also does play Doomkaiser Dragon in his extra deck, which is pretty cool because you have like Brain Control and Econ, so you can like steal things, make Doomkaiser, and like climb up into higher synchros if you're playing against zombies. So pretty cool there. Shout out to James Ark. He does have a YouTube channel, James Ark the Professor. Make sure that you go check him out and subscribe. So we have another Vayu deck. Not a lot to say once again about Vayu. So we're just going to kind of skip over that one. We have Hero Beat, which I'm pretty surprised to see. So just for some background, I actually tried playing Hero Beat probably about 3 weeks ago in a tournament. I've never piloted Hero Beat before. It's probably the one deck of the whole format that I've never been behind the steering wheel of. And throughout my run playing in the tournament, I was like, yeah, this this ain't it, man. This deck is not what I feel like it once was. Very underpowered. Just, you really have to grind to win. And even when you're winning with the deck, a lot of times you end up winning from a losing position, if that makes any sense. I feel like the deck is very, very weak to DD Crow the more I've played with it. And originally I thought, like, what does DD Crow do to Hero Beat? But I feel like it actually does a lot more than I originally thought. Like, sure, it doesn't answer Alias on the field, but it answers Miracle Fusion and Hero Blast very well, because this deck sometimes can get put in awkward positions to where you just have to hope they don't have Crow for your Miracle Fusion if you have, you know, only one hero and one water, and you can get backed into a corner very easily with Hero Beat. Another gripe that I have with Hero Beat is just the fact that the deck does not have an unfair card. If you look at every other deck in Edison format, whether it be Lightsworn, Vayu Turbo, Frogs, Gladiator Beast, they all have cards that are unfair, and Hero Beat does not have any cards in its deck that are unfair. Alias is literally Luster Dragon. I guess Stratos is a good card, but Stratos is not unfair by any means. Gets to take advantage of Honest, which I guess is good. I mean, I guess it gets to play Future Fusion, but I really don't want a deck that I only have good matchups when I have Future Fusion on the field. So it just felt very weak, and sometimes you just get like FTK'd by defense position Gores. But this guy, let's see, Anthony J. And like I said, these are not in any particular order, was playing the deck with Skill Drain. And I feel like personally that this is where Hero Beat needs to be in the current metagame, is that it needs to be on Skill Drain. Skill Drain does give Hero Beat a couple of unfair cards to use at its disposal, especially when you're pairing it with stuff like Thunder King Ryo to limit your opponent's options, not letting them synchro summon, not letting them search early in the game if you haven't already activated Skill Drain. Like, can you imagine how sick it would be to have like Thunder King on the field, prevent them from activating search cards, and when they finally go for an effect, you just Skill Drain, you know, or if they go for a synchro play, you can Thunder King. So it's pretty strong. I think that this is the direction that competitive Hero Beat has to go in order to see success, just because you can take out some of those blanket effects that you normally would lose to. I also kind of feel like this deck should be on Captain Gold and Skyscraper, because it solves a big issue of getting over big monsters that you can sometimes just lose to. So maybe we'll see that included later on. But he also did play the Gemini Lancer, which is the 1800 water monster, which obviously works with Gemini Spark, and it's a water for Miracle Fusion. So pretty cool there. He also side decked Kaiko. So like I was saying, lots of Kaiko. Smashing Ground, couple copies of Nobleman of Crossout, Transmigration Prophecy. So pretty cool there. Congratulations to him for playing Hero Beat and doing well with it. And we have a Blackwing deck. Not a lot to really say about Blackwings, but this guy was also playing 5. This is Luke Feeney, and that name sounds familiar. I'm pretty sure he's friends with Frazier, all those guys. But he was playing the 5 draw traps. And everyone has always told me in any kind of like breakdown videos I've ever watched, talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Theory and like statistics and stuff like that, that 5 is the number of copies of a card you want to play when you want to open one, but you don't want to open multiples. So I feel like, you know, like it's probably okay to open up multiples of this card, but I don't really want to open like, you know, 3 of this if I can help it. So I feel like 5 is probably good. Very clean Blackwing list. Some of these lists with the multiple draw cards have chose to cut down on their Blizzard and their Borer ratios, but he actually chose to play 3 and 3 still. So the tried and true, and I guess it worked out for him because he got into top 16. We also have Michael D, who played like Frog Monarchs with Destiny Hero Malicious in the main, which is cool. The first time I ever saw this done was Dimitri at YCS Indy a couple months ago, playing like Hero Frogs with Malicious in the deck. So I thought that was pretty cool here. Dark Dust Spirit in the side, Nobleman of Extermination in the side, Spiritual Water Art in the side, Karma Cut in the side, which I feel like has kind of become the new standard, and triple Ryza in the main deck. I'm not sure if Dimitri played Ryza at all, or let alone how many copies he played, but This is kind of like Frog Monarch mixed with Hero Frogs. He's also got the Dandelion technology in here. So pretty cool. I really enjoy just watching, new things take off and do well. So let's see what else that we have here. And we're about 15 minutes into this, and you're probably just going to have to deal with me rambling throughout some of this video because I don't have any co-host with me tonight. My usual co-host, Austin Butcher, got sick and was not able to come on tonight. And the other guys on my team, it's just so late. Some of them have kids. Hard to get them out this late. So we do have a zombie list that made it. And this deck looks pretty cool. Instant Fusion with Diva. We have triple copies of Book of Life. We also have a Ryza in the main deck, which I feel like I have never seen that from a zombie player before ever. Playing Ryza in the deck. Triple Pyramid Turtle. Don't think that's the standard for this deck either. But I guess it makes sense. You want to see your recruiters more because you are playing 4 Monarchs, 3 Caius, and 1 Ryza. So you can always Pyramid Turtle into your Goblin Zombie, Tribute Summon, and get pluses off of it. Side deck, pretty cool. We have Breaker, DD Assailant. We have some Trap Hole and Transmigration Prophecy technology in the side of this one. So yeah, another really cool list. I'm a big fan of the Instant Fusion zombie deck. I think that basically being able to have 2 copies of Spirit Reaper because of Reaper on the Nightmare is really, really cool. Big fan of that one. All right, in top 16, or actually I do believe top 4, there was a Lightsworn player, William, who I think his screen name is Monando Boy, something like that. Played pure Lightsworn. And this list, I actually said that this is ancient Lightsworn technology. This is really the tried and true. There's literally nothing special about this list at all. You have like the double chain, which is probably the most spicy thing about the main deck. But this is just a good example that pure Lightsworn, can just get you through a tournament. Like if you're having a day where you're milling your Wolves, you're resolving Celestia, your opponent is overcommitting into cards like Threatening Roar, you can just get to the top 4 of a tournament. And we've seen it time and time again throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, what Lightsworn can do. So the main deck, like I said, is nothing really special. There's no spicy technology in there. The side deck, we do have a Breaker in here. We have a Soul Release. We have triple Consecrated Light, which is where I feel like Lightsworn needs to be. I feel like, and I've said this several times, this is going to be me kind of going off on a rant about Lightsworn. I feel like if you just play cards that go with your game plan as a Lightsworn player, that you just win naturally because your deck, when your deck is performing, I think it's better than every other deck. But when your deck is not performing, it's probably one of the worst decks. But I mean, isn't that every deck? So when you're playing cards like Decree and Consecrated Light, Iron Wall, Mask of Restrict, that just completely lock your opponent out of playing and they slow it down to a point to where, Lightsworn is getting into the mid game where it wants to be. I feel like whenever I play Lightsworn, most of the games I lose are because I either died very early or I just was never able to get anything going. I was like milling 3, hitting 3 spells and traps, or getting bottomless, not ever getting to summon, having to set Raikou, getting Kaya, stuff like that. So if you just play these cards that say, hey, I'm going to play my deck, and I'm going to make you draw a card that says I can't play my deck, or you just lose, then I feel like that's probably the approach you need to be taking with Lightsworn. So no surprise that we have triple Consecrated in there. And Decrees, no explanation needed. Iron Wall is really cool. I wonder if Iron Wall ever conflicted for him at all with Necrogardna and Gold Sarcophagus in this one. I'm a big believer in Iron Wall, especially in Christia decks, where your graveyard is a little more prone to like getting hit with DD Crow because you have to keep like the 4 names for JD and the 4 fairies for Christia. The Iron Wall just flips over, says you're not going to Crow me anymore, you're not going to Bottomless me anymore, you're not going to Deprison me anymore, you're not going to Caius me anymore. All those cards are vanillas, they do nothing. So I've become a really big fan of this card, and I'm actually considering going back and playing Christia Sworn just because of the fact that this card is so strong in that deck. One of my favorite side deck cards to play in Christia Sworn, period. And Yeah, big fan. You get infinite plague spreaders. That's like the only card you really have to watch out for when you have Iron Wall on the field is like against Vayu. They can Brio out of this. Takes them quite a few cards because they have to have a level 4 to summon, they have to have a card to stack for Plague Spreader, and they have to have a card to pitch for Brio. But that deck can definitely do that, so you have to watch out for that. And their Plague will also go back to the graveyard because it's not able to be banished. But, you know, this card comes down as basically baby Royal Decree. That's what I always say. Like the things I said earlier. No Deep Prison, no Bottomless, no Crow. All of those things are just completely, just don't do anything now. Mask of Restrict was probably the most interesting one. I don't really feel like this is that great against the Hero Frog deck, which is probably the most popular variant of Frogs. I also sometimes can be scared to play Mask of Restrict when I'm on triple Celestia. Maybe he sided one out. But getting locked out of summoning Celestia at times, I feel like could put you on the back foot. But obviously, I mean, it ended up working out for him. So he was definitely cooking. So Diva Hero also topped. And this was a very spicy list of Diva Hero. I'm a big fan of the Gravekeeper Spy inclusion in this deck. I know that people have mixed feelings on it, and I can definitely understand why. Like, you're playing Spine Gilman, you're playing Gravekeeper's Descendant, you're playing Malicious, you're playing, like, Infernal Prodigy, you're playing all these cards that are so dead if you draw them. But I feel like when they're resolving, it's really good. I think Spy kind of gives you some defense that you don't normally have. It can kind of be, like, an out, this is in air quotations, to Royal Oppression. If they just attack your set Spy, you're able to flip it up, get your Descendant, and then protect your guys to be able to pop Oppression is nice. Gives you access to stuff like Tempest Magician, makes your Diva play really crazy. So I'm a big fan of this one. I like the list a lot. The list I'm looking at is from Keegan's Top 16 list over on E3 Yu-Gi-Oh's channel, and he doesn't have the 15th side deck card in here. So I'm not exactly sure what that was supposed to be. Maybe he just didn't know. But we have a lot of one-ofs in here as well, like Vortex, Knock, Trap Stun, Crow, Fossil Dyna, Deck Devi, Snowman, Dust Tornado. And I feel like that's probably because a deck like this, you really can't afford to be swapping out 5 or 6 cards. You're probably only siding in 1 card, 2 card, 3 cards max in this deck. So, but congratulations to you for playing something so interesting and something so different. I really enjoy seeing that. So the Hero Frog list that topped, I don't believe that I've talked about this yet. It's almost 10 o'clock at night. I'm getting quite sleepy. But this list looks exactly like Fraser Smith's list from Indianapolis. I don't know if there are any changes. Not sure if Fraser played Super Poly in the side or not, but this one's playing Super Poly. Big fan of Hero Frogs. I think this deck is so cool. It's a lot of fun to watch this deck work, especially when it's doing things like Future Fusion, Dandelion, Shenanigans, and it just feels kind of like an FTK when that ends up happening most of the time. So big fan of that. And that's basically it when it comes to talking about the RBET. Want to give a huge shout out once again to Keegan for running these things and all the staff and everyone for all of this. And yeah, so we can spend the last like 20 minutes of this thing rambling. So I've actually been really wanting to cook up a different list for Lightsworn lately, like really wanting to try something different. And Carpath uploaded a video of Amaryllis a couple weeks ago that Dimitri had actually made, and this included 3 copies of Shield Warrior. Now, I had bought 2 copies of Shield Warrior about a year ago, so last summer. I bought the Super Germans because it does not have a foil print in English, so I bought 2 Super Germans. And I was like, you know, if he can play that in Amaryllis, then I can play this in Lightsworn. So I have really been trying to cook a list with that card. I've ordered a 3rd Super, and I have tried about everything under the sun to get that card to work. And I feel like somehow, some way, that is the best way to play pure Lightsworn. Because when you're playing pure, sometimes the difference in winning and losing is just your Lila making it back to you. Not allowing them to set back row, getting the Celestia conversions, and Shield Warrior really fits the bill for that. But Shield Warrior has one huge flaw, especially in the way that the meta has evolved right now. So if you look back at Lightsworn lists from like 2008, I believe, is when like Lightsworn was peak. Kaiko the Ghost Destroyer was such a good card because Necro Gardener was at 3. So Kaiko drops, you cannot garden anything, and you're basically stuck with having to have Honest to prevent your guy from dying and 2 cards in your graveyard from getting banished. It's kind of the same thing now. So we're playing 3 Shield Warrior and Necro Gardener, and now people have finally realized, hey, Kaiko the Ghost Destroyer is pretty dang good. So you end up summoning Lila, milling over Shield Warrior. They summon Kaiko. They hit you for 100. They banish your Shield Warrior. It's not a good time. So I don't think it is really the best time to be playing anything crazy like Shield Warrior in your Lightsworn deck. It's probably going to be a hard time for Lightsworn decks right now in general with people playing that card. It really sucks when that card drops and just takes your names out of the graveyard, takes away your Plague, takes away your Gardener, or takes away one or both JDs if you happen to mill them early. So maybe playing cards like Burial from a Different Dimension and Return from a Different Dimension could actually be good now. I have played Return a few times in the past just because it's really, really good into the decks that play stuff like Soul Release. So maybe you'll see more of that from the Lightsworn players, more Imperial Iron Wall. I have quite a few things on my Lightsworn agenda that I want to go over and test. So right now, I'm going to dive into testing James Ark's Twilight deck. I sleeved it up, tested it for about a week, but that was like rapidly approaching YCS Indianapolis. And when I would play with the deck, I was like, this is not black and white. You know, like Theedisonclub and Lightsworn can be black and white, where like if you've just played with the deck enough, you just know, you know, like what to do and when. When I was playing with Twilight, it would seem like even when I did what I thought was the correct play, there was a play I didn't see that was so much better just because the deck can do so much. You have everything good about Lightsworn. So like Lumina, Charge, Lila, Celestia, Wolf. You have all those cards in that deck. But you also have like every other good card into the entire format. So like Caius, Dark Arm, Chaos Sorcerer, Sangan, Allure, DD Crow. You have all these different cards. You have all these different options that you can do in that deck. So I feel like that's a deck you need a lot of reps to be able to pilot correctly. So that's where I'm at right now with Lightsworn. Really want to test out the Twilight deck. And I really want to get back on Theedisonclub because it does seem like we are approaching a heavy frog meta again. People are starting to play frogs again. So I do want to start playing Theedisonclub again because frogs is just such a good matchup for Theedisonclub. Like I've played that matchup so many times, and so far I've only ever lost to that one time in a tournament setting. In an in-person tournament setting, I've lost to frogs one time, and I've played against it at every event I've went to in like the last year, multiple times throughout the tournament. It's just so free. And so something that happened on the stream at the RBET was the Lightsworn player had actually sided in Royal Decrees against frogs. And, you know, I thought that was very strange. I think that still is very strange. I don't think that Regeki Break and Wind Blast in frog decks is just like FTKing you as a Lightsworn player. It's kind of the same thing with the dupe block. Like when I get dupe blocked, I'm not like, oh my god, I have to get over this right now. I'm like, cool, like, you know, we can draw this game out. You know, like this is fine. This is going to go in my favor. You know, if I'm milling my cards over and I'm getting to, because like once JD drops, everyone's all the same. It doesn't matter if you have dupe block on the field or not. It's gone. You know, same thing with basically every field. So that's what I always say. Like getting Lightsworn into the mid game is where Lightsworn really wants to be. But he was playing Decrees, and I thought that was very, very strange. I still think that's very strange. I don't think for pure that's a move, but I do think that for Theedisonclub could actually kind of be onto something there, because frogs will have to use cards like Regeki Break, Mirror Force, Wind Blast, Torrential, Karma Cut, all of that to get over Christia. So if you kind of like just hold your Decree until the point where you can go Christia Decree, I feel like you probably just win. So I don't know. Maybe he was really cooking something there for the future. But I also feel like in that matchup, I kind of want Iron Wall as well. So I don't know if maybe if you stun in the early game with Iron Wall and follow through with Decree, or if you're doing way too much, if you're trying to do that, like Christia is probably just good enough by himself to be able to win that matchup. But you never know. Like, I always think it's good to keep an open mind and try out new things people haven't done before, or even things people would just flat out call you crazy for trying, like Decree against Frogs. So, pretty cool there. So yeah, I want to apologize yet again for the lack of podcasts. It's just been so difficult to get these things together and get them done just because of the weather and losing power and all that. And I hope that you guys are really enjoying the content that I'm putting out. It has been definitely one of the more rough, one of the darker times in my life. If you're not sure what's going on, I did upload a video on that on a channel with the title of Channel Update, I believe, important message, something like that. So I've been going through a lot. It's been more difficult to find the motivation to make content, but I'm really trying to stay motivated, keep pushing myself to get better, not only at the game, but also at content creation as well. And just keep moving forward. So I do plan on doing a video with Frozen Soul a week from tomorrow. So this video is being filmed Friday night. Now it is 9:54 p.m. I feel terrible. And a week from tomorrow, so Saturday the 17th, I believe. Hold on, let's see. Saturday the 17th, I am going to be doing a video with Frozen Soul on Twilight, where basically I'm going to let him take me to DB Ladder and just kind of show me some things about the deck. That's the variant of Lightsworn that I have the least amount of experience with, because in the beginning, that variant of Lightsworn was kind of a meme to a lot of people. It just kind of felt like Lightsworn meets Diva Hero, like a lot of just one-of cards. They're not really reliable. You know, you're kind of doing too much, but after the James list came out, when people were playing Sangan and Crow and Allure, then Frozen Soul's list, which was very similar to James' list, it's the same list that he piloted way back in the day. I think like the main difference, I believe, was that he played Gale in his deck, and I was actually talking to him a little while ago, and he said he was 4-0 on ladder against Machina and Frogs. So the deck definitely has potential. I think that Twilight Sworn is probably the hardest variant of Lightsworn to side against, because it only shuts off half the deck if you have Light Mirror. Where like normal Lightsworn, it's like having skill drain on the field. You cannot activate anything, and you don't even get your wolf effects anymore. But with Twilight, you still have Dark Arm Dragon, you still have Chaos Sorcerer, you still have Sangan, you still have all these dark monsters that can just carry the game and win games by themselves. We see a lot of games throughout a tournament run where Dark Arm Dragon is just the deciding factor in a match by itself. So Twilight Sworn could also be the move moving forward, just because of the difficulty to side deck against it. You can take full advantage of cards like Return from the Different Dimension, because you're not dependent on your opponent making it live for you. You have Necrogardener, you have Plague Spreader, you have Chaos Sorcerer and Dark Armed. All these cards you can use to make that card live. So it's pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to testing out Twilight. So this episode's probably going to end up being a little shorter, 33 minutes, and that's probably going to be it for tonight, guys. I'm probably about to go to sleep. I just really wanted to get something up for you guys on Friday this week. But we're getting back on schedule. Going to start doing these every single Friday. Also, too, I do plan on maybe filming some of these in person. We do meet up on Friday nights normally and test at my friend's house. So we've discussed doing like actual video podcast with us, like around a table. So if that's something that you would like to see, just let me know. You can send your listener letters and fan mail to the EdisonClubFanmail@gmail.com. I really enjoy it when people do that. I love reading your listener letters, and when you guys ask me questions and stuff like that. I really enjoy that so much. Also, too, I do have one special shout out to give, which is to my friend Kunwoo Lee. And his message to the world is to unban Mystic Mind. So, Konami, if you are listening to this, it would be a great idea for you to unban Mystic Mind and put it back at 3. So, shout outs to Kunwoo. I'm actually holding them right here. Gave me a really good hookup on these Black Rose Dragon Judge sleeves. So I told him that I would relay his message to the world and get it out there and get Mystic Mind unbanned for him, which is his favorite card. So shout outs to Kunwoo for hooking me up, and hopefully he gets his favorite card back very, very soon. So want to once again thank you guys for listening to the Edison Club podcast. This is Mike signing out. Until the next one. Have a great weekend, everyone.